Are we good to go? Hi, and welcome everybody to Asia's largest science and technology festival, IIT Bombay's Techfest. I'm your host, Hardik Vaidya. In this edition of online lecture series, it is my absolute pleasure and an honor to have with us Abhinav Bindra, India's first individual Olympic gold medalist. A title, by the way, which remains untouched, unblemished in almost a decade and a half. It was actually he who ended India's long search for an individual Olympic gold medal. A sporting legend, a phenomenal human being who still remains on a quest for excellence. Welcome, Abhinav. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you are keeping safe and well.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind words of introduction and happy to be here.
There are so many things running in my mind, Abhinav. I want to jump right in because there is so much ground to cover. I want to first start off by asking over 150 medals in your illustrious career of 22 years. Do you need like a different, like two, three rooms and maybe like armed personnel to keep those things intact and safe and secure?
Oh, to be very honest, I am quite. I'm not very. What is the word? These medals were outcomes which are out of a lot of work, but they are displayed in a room in my house. However, I go to that room very rarely because this is my past and I've moved on. I've always practiced detachment to a great degree, and outcomes are something which mattered to a certain degree. Of course, I wanted the success and I wanted to win all these titles. However, the quest of it, the journey towards it was far more fulfilling. And now that I have kind of exited my investment of sorts and retired from sport, I can look back at this journey a little bit more dispassionately. And yes, I do have a few medals hanging on my wall, but what I do remember more fondly is, of course, the memories that I built. The relationships that I built with people who I associated with in my quest, in my sporting quest, in my sporting journey. And to be very honest, the medals are nice, but I think the relationships that were built, the memories that I have, the learnings that I had from sport, the failures, what I learned from failures, the hard times that I had, the good times that I had, all those things is what makes my past memorable, and I just cherish those memories much more than much more than these medals, which are that's how you bring life to these outcomes and bring life to these medals. So the relationships and the memories.
I will unpack quite a few pointers you said in the first get-go. But for the benefit of our viewers, let's make sure we spread today's insightful conversation with everyone on social media on all platforms that you're tuned in. Use your posts, use your stories, tag us and let us know. You've mentioned it's detachment that you've practiced, relationships that you've built. But Abhinav, the journey, the period that you started in, the training period that you started in was way back. I mean, it was, let's say, an out-of-box choice for people who were not even aware that you could pursue this as a sporting career in the first place. What drew you to the sport?
That's an interesting question. As a kid, I was I was a fat boy, and I was somebody who, as a child, I hated sport. My only talent as a child was to miss physical education classes at school. So one fine day, I was introduced to the sport of shooting, and I really loved it because the sport did not really involve much movement, and I just had to stand still. So for the fat boy who hated to run around, it was a perfect fit of sorts. But that is the reason why I took up the sport. But to actually succeed in the sport, I of course had to work quite hard. Fitness was something which was my complete weakness, and I had to really struggle and work to make it a strength. But that is the real reason why I took it up. It was just because I hated every other sport, and this one was nice because there was no real running around me, at least at the start of it. Little did I know that to succeed in it, I actually had to run around quite a lot, but that came later.
It is like a common misconception that people have when they say shooting is not really a physical sport. And on the contrary, I beg to differ, because human body is sort of designed to move, and you are doing something contrary. You're remaining still. You're not moving. Let's talk about that a little bit more.
Yes, so as you rightly said, the human body is built to move, and when you're trying to really stay still, it is a very, very challenging thing what you have to do. I mean, each one of you tuning in today, just try and stand on one leg and close your eyes, and you'll see how tough it is to keep still. But more than anything, there is whenever we talk about something which is a mental activity, it's actually the success of that mental activity is actually born out of a good solid physical foundation that you have, and especially when it comes to tough situations and pressure situations. For example, in the sport of shooting, when you enter an Olympic final and when you have one shot left and that will decide if you're going to win the gold medal at the Olympic Games or not, your heart is going to start beating, and your heart is going to start beating very fast. And if you're not physically fit, it will just shoot up to uncontrollable levels. And in a sport like shooting, we actually try and shoot in between heartbeats. So if your heart is beating in like 200 beats per minute, which it possibly can, with all the adrenaline coming in, and then it becomes very, very challenging. So having a great amount of good conditioning is equally important in a sport like shooting. Of course, the obvious factors of stability and balance is critical, but also conditioning, which people don't really think associate to shooting, is actually very, very important to be in the top condition, especially when you're trying to perform under pressure. Training and succeeding in training is one thing, in pleasant circumstances, but when you go to competition, it becomes lethal, because suddenly from one moment to the other, there's an internal volcano which is ready to erupt, and then you have to find calm in between chaos, and that can only be achieved when your mind and body are working in tandem. You cannot be mentally strong if you do not have a physical body or a physical condition to back you up there. So it's all interlinked. You have to find that synergy and that synchronization between mind and body if one has to succeed at the highest levels. Of course, in the sport of shooting, perhaps a little bit more in the sport of shooting, but I think it is similar in all sports. It is always a synchronization of mind and body.
You mentioned something about conditioning and synchronization of mind and body. While in the year, I believe 2000, in Summer Olympics at Sydney, you were the youngest athlete to represent our country. Uh, I mean, it's unreal to imagine the adrenaline, the focus, the spotlight that you're in, the expectations the nation has on you. How do you get through that pressure? How do you cope with expectations? Did these strategies evolve? Has this been an evolving process? Please walk us through. I'm sure this will be particularly useful for a lot of people.
Of course, I think, when I started off at the Sydney Games, it was my first Olympics, and it was a thrilling experience for a young boy to just go to this global arena and to represent your country, etc. And of course, much was not expected out of me. But, for example, when I went into the 2008 Olympics, I was already world champion. And then the level of expectations rises manifold. One again has to learn to practice this whole theory of detachment. And I was pretty detached from outcomes. And to be very honest, there will always be external expectations. People expect a lot out of yourself, and also you yourself expect quite a lot out of yourself. But I think more than anything, what really, really is important in life is not to chase success, but to chase self-respect. And that is something that I precisely did. And it was a completely different philosophy that I was doing. I was chasing. Yes, I was wanting to win a gold medal at the Olympics and all of that kind of stuff. But one thing is that had I done everything humanly possible to prepare for the event, had I put in every day the amount of work that was necessary to be put in, the Olympics came once in 4 years, but for me, the athlete, the Olympics came every day. And I had to look myself into the mirror and ask myself, the difficult question that have I done my best today? And if the answer was yes, and if the answer was consistently yes, leading up to the games and answering before going into a games, that there could be nothing more that I could do to prepare for this event, humanly possible. I gave it my all. Even before I took the first shot at the Olympics, I was a winner. I was a winner in my own eyes. And I think that to me is the most important thing in life. And that to me was the most important thing in my sporting career. And that always gave me a great sense of security. Sometimes, we often talk about confidence and for young people to have that self-belief and confidence. But it can also be misconstrued because sometimes there's a very fine line between confidence and overconfidence. But when you really chase self-belief, it gives you a great amount of security from within, a quiet sense of confidence where you're ready to do your best, put your head down in difficult moments and perform under pressure. And that, I think, is what is needed. And that can only be brought out, not just out of verbal dialogue saying that you're the best in the world, but more out of an internal feeling of security that can only come through when you've been totally honest to your own self and totally honest to yourself, saying, yes, I have done it, given it my all, and I could not do anything more to prepare for the games. And then that just gives you that's a great place to be in, especially when you have to perform under an immense amount of pressure.
There's a recurring theme, Abhinav, that I sense about self-awareness. You are extremely self-aware about what you're good at, what you're not good at, the technicalities of the sport. You mentioned detachment, which is a very deeply spiritual concept. I want to understand goal or process. What do you look at more?
Sorry, I lost you a little bit. Could you repeat that question?
So goal or process, I understand that you are very deeply self-aware as an individual. You talk a lot about detachment, which is a deeply spiritual concept. What do you prefer? Is it the goal? Is it the process?
Of course, I am totally driven by the process. The goal is important. And I think, once you set your eyes on a goal, you don't necessarily need to remind yourself of that goal every single day because it's clear in your head what outcome you want to have. But then what you really need to do to achieve that goal is to really immerse yourself in the process. It is think about running, and if you want to run fast, you can't just be thinking about running fast. You actually have to go and run fast. So you have to immerse yourself in the process, and immersing yourself in the process really means to also live in the moment, to really immerse yourself and give it your all to that particular moment. And performance under stress, and performance under when there is duress in the body is really about really living in the moment, not thinking too much ahead, but also not getting bogged down by the past, and really living it in the moment. And when you are able to live it in the moment, you are actually able to immerse yourself in the process. And I am a true believer and complete believer in the power of the process, in perfecting the process, in trying to get better every single day. Everybody is skilled in whatever activity you do. I was skilled to a certain degree in my sport, and there was very little that I could do to further improve my skill. But there is absolutely no end to a human being's ability to improve the ability to execute that skill to perfection. There is absolutely no limit. And once you immerse yourself in the process, I think it just betters your chance of executing your skill to a higher degree. And you can only do that when you are totally focused on the process. There are different building blocks to a certain goal. There are hundreds of different building blocks to achieve a certain outcome. And there comes the process, and there comes perfecting these different processes. Sometimes you require a narrow focus, sometimes you require a wider focus, and sometimes you need to go back to a narrow focus, or you need to go back to a wider focus. So it is all about really focusing on the process. And I think that to me just improves your chances of achieving your desired goal. If you try and if you learn to immerse yourself in the process, and the process then becomes your goal. The process in itself becomes the reward. And that is where when you're in love with when you really are in the process, and when you're in love with with your process, that is when you are truly passionate about what you do. You can only achieve this love with the process, or being immersed in the process, when you fall in love with the boring and the mundane, because often success is all about doing the boring work and the mundane work efficiently day in and day out, and that is nothing else but the process.
Very interesting take on that. So we focus on the process and the goal takes care of itself.
True.
Right. There is a couple of pointers that you mentioned a little while back. One is about staying in the moment, and one is that you get one shot. It's the nerves that remain calm in that moment when you're given that opportunity. That's exactly what happened in the 2008 Beijing Olympics when you had that one last shot with Henry, and you scored a 10.8. Please help us understand what is it, because when you're competing with individuals at that level, everyone's a world class player. Everyone is vying for that one gold. What happened in that moment? Please walk us through that.
Yes, of course, I was competing with others, but more than anybody else, I was competing against my own self. And the idea was to really bring out the best out of my own self. The idea was to just live it in the moment. I was not shooting one Olympic competition that day. I was shooting 60 competitions in qualification, because our qualification has 60 shots. And I was shooting 10 competitions in the final, because our final has 10 shots. So it was really trying to stay in the moment. It was really about complete detachment from the outcome, and really getting immersed in actually performance. The thrill was actually to immerse yourself in performance and forget about everything else, forget about what is going on around you, and just focus on the performance. And that is exactly what the last shot, as you were saying, was there. It was something that was well prepared for, because in sport you often require tactics. Yes, there are 60 competitions in qualifications and 10 shots in the final, but things keep changing, and every shot is a new competition, and every new competition brings in its new challenges, which you have to learn to quickly adapt to. And that is exactly what my last shot was. Of course, the last shot, there was a certain amount of awareness that that this is the last shot, and I require a good closure to this competition. But again, it was well trained for. There was a tag, there was a clear strategy in place on how I would take this last shot. The idea was to be aggressive. The idea was to really go for it, and then the idea was to back my own abilities and think about nothing else. And that is what I tried to do. Of course, it was thrilling to be able to shoot my best shot in that last moment, especially after 69 competition shots, where I found myself tied with Henry Hakkinen that day. And to come out with a 10.8 was indeed spectacular, I can say. But again, it was only possible because I was able to really live in the moment and really not think about the outcome, and really not think about the past. It was just being in the moment and trying to execute the best possible shot in that competition, which happened to be the 70th shot of the day.
I want to get a quick take from you. So if there is a point in time where you're not happy with a certain shot, this is particularly, I ask for the benefit of our viewers, that in case something doesn't go your way, how do you quickly recover from that particular loss or a situation? I'd like to get a quick take on that, please.
See, again, again, it is about really practicing staying in the moment. When I talk about, and I talked about this now, it is not just about staying in the moment in the activity where what you're trying to be good at. It is about being mindful in life and practicing this in various activities. For example, if you're eating lunch and if your mind is racing to 30 different thoughts, you're not really being mindful to that meal. But if you just give yourself that moment and practice mindfulness and the ability to stay in the moment and enjoy your food, whatever you're eating at that point of time, you practice it. And exactly like that, you have to practice staying in the moment in various different elements of your life. And when you make that a way of life, you're just able to bring that back in your desired activity in a much more efficient manner. And that is exactly what I try to do through my career. I know it is easier said than done. Stay in the moment, forget the past. It sounds good theoretically, but in reality, you have to really practice it, and you have to practice it not just in the activity where what you're trying to be good at, but in various other uh, fields of life. And uh, with what if you've had a bad shot, again you have to learn to let go. You have to learn to learn from what when you've done something wrong. There's always learning, so you
Right.
have to learn from that small setback or failure, and you have to learn to let go of the unwanted baggage that comes along with a bad shot or with failure, and learn to again move on, and try and live in the moment. And really honestly, this can only happen when you make this a way of life, and you practice it really outside. I never ever got confidence, for example, from my sport. Even though I was in the best possible form, I was never confident. But and then how do I get some degree of security? Because I too am a human being, and I need a certain degree of security leading up to an Olympic Games or something like that, or a different competition. I always got that from something else. So you always have to remain very open-minded, and you never know where you're going to learn something from.
Sure.
So these are the various ways where what I practiced, and that really helped me come back and stay in the moment, even though I've had a bad moment in the past
Right.
or had a bad shot.
Right. So when you mentioned about practice and the training, a large part of your training period was in abroad, particularly Germany played a very crucial role in your training process. Uh, could you talk about some interesting examples about facilities that India maybe at this point doesn't have or is in the process of building some?
Well, I think a lot is being done now in India as well, to create the requisite infrastructure that is required to make our athletes the best in the world. But of course, when I was competing, I was just about the sport was just about getting popular in India, or and things like that. So I always had to go abroad to train, and that always happens to be plan B, because when I was not living there permanently, it was about going and visiting Germany and accessing all those training facilities, and and then coming back home, and then at home those facilities necessarily did not exist. So that was always plan B. But now in India as well, there is much more infrastructure being made available for our athletes, and it is not just about training athletes in that particular sport or in that particular sport. There's so much that goes around preparation. There's the mental preparation, there's physical preparation, there's nutritional support. So a lot of things go around it, and athletes always have to find that 1% edge to be better than the others, because when you compete at an Olympic Games, whoever is there is very good, and each one of them has the ability to win on that particular day. So you always have to try and find that edge from the others, and that can only happen um, when you look at and train for these 1% percenters, and you have to have a very scientific approach, which was available to the Western world, and that is now slowly but surely getting incorporated in India as well.
So you mentioned about the 1%, which I think is such a crucial concept of growth, about 1% growing consistently. While I understand it's an extremely difficult thing to follow, but it's definitely an aspirational North Star to have. Uh, One of the things that you've continuously done post your role as a leader, maybe as a thought leader, is giving back to the society as a thought leader, as an individual who wants to contribute more to the building a sporting nation, which is through ABTP initiatives and Abhinav Bindra Foundation. Could you walk us through what is happening there, and give us more light on that, please?
Yeah, so I always wanted to had a great desire to give back, because when you receive so much, the act of giving back becomes even more important. And my outreach post my retirement through Indian sport, and sport in particular, is through the Abhinav Bindra Foundation. We have three pillars that work in this foundation. Is number one is intervention, where we've set up these ABTP centers, which bring in these cutting edge methodologies, which we just talked about. And bringing the best of science, technology, engineering, analytics, and medicine to athlete training. And we give scholarships to young athletes, grassroots level athletes, and incorporate all these scientific measures to their entire preparation. So that is the number one point. The number two aspect of the foundation is education, where we've set up a sports science and research institute where we've started courses in bringing global best practice, and started courses in sports science, in physiotherapy, for example, as a starter, because it's not just about giving everything to our athletes. It's also about creating that ecosystem, and a world-class ecosystem that surrounds the athlete. And so these are two elements that we've started at the Sports Medicine Institute. In education, we also ran a program for our leadership. In India, often we've talked a lot about governance and sometimes the lack of governance in sports. So we recently did a program alongside the LMS Foundation, where in partnership with the University of Loughborough, which is regarded as one of the best sports universities in the world, we ran a program for all our sports administrators, the Sports Authority of India, etc., to bring in global best practices in sports high performance, in sports high performance management, and of course governance. That is one aspect. The third aspect of education is athlete mental health. And this is something very close to my heart. I worked a lot with my role in the International Olympic Committee on athlete mental health. So we are doing programs for the entire ecosystem in India in sport to create psychologically safe environments for our athletes. It is a very, very important element in performance as well, because often we only focus on the performance aspect of an athlete. And often we forget that athletes are human beings first, and we have to actually take care of their human well-being. And if we do that, the chances of them performing better are even more. The third element or pillar of the foundation is using sport for social good. There, alongside a former rival of mine, three-time Olympic champion from Italy, Niccolò Campriani, who now is a close friend, we set up a program to help refugees, because the Rio Olympic Games saw the first ever refugee team take part at the Games. These are people who've been through immense hardship in life and have been displaced from their country of origins and now hold no nationality. So we picked out a selection of 25 refugees in Lausanne, Switzerland, because that's where Niccolò is based. And we picked three refugees to train them to become athletes and become athletes in the sport of shooting. And hopefully, I'm quite confident that a couple of them may make it to Tokyo, the Games at Tokyo next year, as part of this international refugee team. So that's the work that we've been doing in the foundation. This is something which I'm very passionate about. It's close to my heart, and I look forward to try and continue to contribute.
I think mental health has become such an important and a critical point of conversation, particularly during the times that we're living in. The pandemic has made this conversation a lot more open, a lot more democratized. And I'm really, really happy that a leader like yourself is talking and is actually taking practical steps for bridging the gap here. So thank you very much for focusing on such an intangible aspect of the sport. Your journey, I want to take you back a little bit more, is from the 2004 to 2008 period, was fraught with a bunch of injuries, demotivation. How do you overcome from that phase, and could you walk us through that journey a little bit? It was a long process.
So there are several moments in a sports person's career which are difficult. And there were moments in the period you talked about when I was battling a back injury and things like that. So that became very tough on me. But again, it is what I'd like to really focus and tell your audience today is, I've told them to practice quite a few things, but I'll probably end by not giving too much more advice. But this has been a useful thing that has really helped me through difficult times. And some of you will inevitably will have difficult times as well, and that is again to practice acceptance. Sometimes we just don't we resist difficult moments so much when we are put under uncomfortable situations, or when we are injured or something like that. We resist it because these are times which are uncomfortable to us. But just practicing accepting things, accepting things just for the way they are, because that's the way things are, and learning to really practice acceptance and not resist it really helped me through these difficult times, and just helped me focus on what I needed to do. When you're injured or when you're going through a difficult time, you can spend and waste a lot of your time just being grumpy about fate, and just being saddened and pulled down by bad luck. But that will not take you too far. But if you just accept the situation, not resist the situation, and learn to work with that situation, you just learn to get out of that situation much faster and much more effectively. And that is what I tried to do as well during difficult times, during the moments when I was injured as well. Okay, this is a bad time, this is a hard time, accept it and not resist it, not have self-pity, but do everything possible to work on coming out of that situation or coming out of that challenge more successfully. And that is what I practiced, and that really helped me in these times.
The younger talent today has access to such incredible role models and inspiration. What are your observations about the young talent coming in and people who want to pursue sports as a career, as an option in our country?
I think there is so much talent, of course, in sport in India, but throughout different fields. I think the younger generation of today is so much more competitive than mine. Of course, has much more exposure than we ever had in my generation, and they have a tremendous amount of self-belief, which is absolutely great to see, absolutely wonderful to see. Uh, my only advice to them is, you could be very talented, but talent will only take you so far. Hard work is something which is going to be irreplaceable if you want to really reach the pinnacle of whatever you're trying to do. So really give it your best, because as I said earlier, at the end of the day, you're not answerable to anybody else but to your own self. And make sure that you gain your own self-respect, because that is the most important thing.
Very important point, self-respect. You've won Commonwealth, Asian Games, World Championships, but the pinnacle of sporting glory crown remains Olympics. How is life after being an Olympian and particularly titled as the sporting legend? Your name is carved in the history books. What does it really feel to be like that person?
Well, of course, it is a fulfilling feeling that what the goals that you worked so hard for, you were able to achieve, and you were able to motivate others to also get on the same path. So it is a very fulfilling feeling. It's a great feeling. However, I think as sports taught me, I don't really I don't really live in the past, and that has been a great part of my life, but it has ended, and I don't really look back in it, and I don't continue to live in that glory. I have moved on, and I moved, and an athlete's life is very unique because we live two lives. One is your life in active sport, and then you have to restart life after sport, after you end sport or retire from active sport. And that is precisely what I'm doing now, is focusing on my journey, what is present today, and I'm trying to enjoy the journey. I'm building it step by step, and that is a very interesting thing to do, and I love the process, like I always did. And it is, of course, a different process to what I was involved in sport, but it is all about being focused on the process and enjoying the process and being passionate about what I do. Of course, the past is great. I have great memories, but I can't live in. I can't. What sport taught me very well, and I live by that. Is in sport, yesterday never counts. You're only as good as what you are today, and that is so true in sport, because you could win one day, and on the other day you could be towards the end of the ranking list. So it is about living it day by day and trying to put your best foot forward and doing your best. Day by day. You may fail, but that is okay. The most important thing is to do your best.
I've got to ask you this. While people, the younger talent, look up to you as an inspiration, role model, as a mentor, while you were in the phase of growing to the Olympian that you are today, who were your inspirations, your people that you look up to?
Well, there were several. I think Of course, the role of my family was something which was very, very critical, and they were very inspiring. They were my real inspiration because I was a person who was always assailed by self-doubt, and I was not a confident person, as I alluded to earlier today. And when you're a person like that, you can often get into a very negative state of mind. But my family was somebody who always had an immense amount of faith in my ability. They remained very, very positive throughout ups and downs. Even when I saw a lot of, when I felt hopeless, my family continued to see a lot of hope in me. So, the support and the environment which my family created, which my coaches created, my support staff created, was one of great amount of positivity. And they were my true inspiration. I mean, I can name you some athletes who I looked up to and who had great success, but they and I looked up to them with great respect, but they did not necessarily impact my day-to-day life. But these people, my family, my coaches, my support staff, who were giving it their best, and making my dreams their dreams, were truly inspiring people who inspired me to go out and give my best every day.
Wow, so it really does take, while you are an individual sport, there is a whole team to support you and make your visions and dreams come true. So it is
Absolutely.
never about the individual glory.
No, yeah, of course. Even in being in an individual sport, I had so many people around me and so many people I was working with. So at the end of the day, it all becomes a team effort. And the dynamics of being in an individual sport yet having a team around you is unique because unlike a team sport, when you're in a team environment, you have to learn to gel with your teammates and you live in a team environment. But when you're in an individual sport and you build a team around you, the individual, which was me, I had to manage this team. So I also had to become a manager of sorts because I worked with very different people, and sometimes all of them did not get along with each other. Sometimes I did not even get along with a couple of people I was working with because they put me under uncomfortable situations. They kept pushing me to get out of my comfort zone, which was, of course, great, so important and invaluable for me for my own growth. Most may not have been the most comfortable relationships at that time, but of course, became the most invaluable relationships that I built.
Connecting on the thread, I want to ask you quickly, the lessons you've learned in sport and now as your role as a business leader running various initiatives, have the skill sets been transferable to you running an organization successfully or a business successfully?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is the value sets that you carry along with in life. And I think for me, the most important value set that I carry, which I learned from sport, is integrity. And what I learned from sport is hard work and being really driven by the process. And though that is exactly what I put into my day-to-day life and into my day-to-day work now, doing everything with an incredible amount of integrity and honesty, because again, it's all about that self-respect.
Circles back to self-respect and detachment always, all through the recurring answers. That's actually so phenomenal to hear. One last question is that given your plethora of experiences and the work that you do now, we as citizens of India, what can we do to help India become a thriving sporting nation? What are your thoughts on this, please?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think each one of us and each one of you can contribute to India's sports system. And it's not about contributing financially. I would just say that go out, of course, support our athletes, but just go out and watch sport. The next time there is a local competition in a sport happening in your vicinity, go out and watch it. If there's a district competition happening in whatever sport, go and watch it. I competed in India for 20 odd years without a single person coming out to watch me. But you can make a great contribution to athletes' journey by giving them the respect by just going and watching them.
Fantastic. Abhinav, I want to thank you for everything, absolutely everything you've done and continue to do for our country. I wish on behalf of everybody who's watching this interview the very, very best going forward. Thank you for joining us today and sharing such incredible insights from your life. And I want to thank all our viewers, who've joined this live session today.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Have a good day and stay safe.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.